Welcome to Fully Booked, the bookish podcast where I'll chat about all things book and reading related. Whether you're a new or a pro reader, there's something for everyone to learn. I'm here to help you on your reading journey and find that next great read that will keep you fully booked. Hello, readers, and welcome to episode 31 of Fully Booked. I'm your host, Natalie, and today's episode is going to be about all the books I read in March, which, I'm going to be honest, was fewer than I expected. And yeah, I'm really going to preface that this month somehow ended up being a reading flop, and I don't know what happened, except I guess I do. And okay, let me backtrack and tell you guys some of what happened. Personally, I did not expect this month to be as busy as it turned out. I honestly thought that after I recovered from the cold or whatever I had back in February, it was okay. I have some great reads lined up for the month of March, and we're gonna hit all the goals. Except, okay, very first weekend of March, went out for a belated birthday celebration with my one friend, because her birthday was actually in February, but between Valentine's Day, Family Day, and getting sick, we just didn't have time to meet up in her actual birthday month, so we went out belated. Okay, and then the weekend after that, went out for brunch with my one university friend and her husband, and got to catch up with them because they live a bit far away now, so it's hard to find time to catch up with those friends. Okay, and then the weekend after, we're in the third weekend of March now, it was my grandma's birthday on Saturday, went out for family lunch, and then, just had productive weekend getting other stuff done. And then the weekend after, which is now the fourth weekend of March, yes, if we're counting correctly, was another church friend's birthday, and she invited us to murder mystery dinner party, which was very fun, but I also needed a bit of time that day to prepare and get ready and try to get work done before we went. So yeah, needless to say, so many weekends passed by, so many plans just kept coming up that I just did not have a lot of dedicated time to sit down and read. And I don't know about you guys, I find it hard to focus and really get into a book when I only have half an hour, maybe sometimes less than a windows at a time to read. I feel like I just need days where I have a solid few hours, maybe at least 2 to 3 hours to read, or at least that I know I can sit down and read and be uninterrupted by something, to really get good reading done. And if I don't have that time, then I feel like I just don't even bother reading, because I just hate distracted reading and whatnot. But yeah, anyways, that's what happened. And then it's actually not even the end of the month by the time I'm recording this, but for the last weekend of March, the Saturday is actually my husband's birthday. Talk about month of birthdays, guys. And I just want to have time to spend quality time with him and do something the two of us at this rate. And I don't want to be worried about trying to finish up another book or two or something when it's so close to the end of the month, because it's going to be March 29th, 30th, by the time this weekend hits. So I'm not even going to bother and try this month this rate, and we're just going with what we were able to complete. And I guess I have to say it gets kind of discouraging, although it's still only March, let's be honest. We still have a lot of the months left of the year, but I guess it has been kind of getting discouraging. January was off to such a good start, and then February we kind of declined, and March we also have continued to decline in terms of reading, and it's frustrating, not being able to have, like I said, dedicated time to sit down and read. But at the end of the day, I still am trying to value quality over quantity. And yes, it's great that I have months where I pick up closer to the double digits or more in terms of numbers. But I did notice that this past month I did have a couple books, or at least the books I was picking up were higher star ratings versus some of the 2 and 3 stars that were getting churned out in January and February. So we gotta count all the wins that we can get, and let's just say hopefully next month will be a bit better. I'm also hoping that getting to go outside more, nicer weather outdoors will help with reading, because I love going on walks and bringing my Kindle or my book with me and getting to just sit and read outside, get to spend time outdoors even in that chill kind of way. So yes, hopefully April we will have some sort of upward trend to report. But anyways, I guess that's all the life updates for March along with the progressive reading journey. But yeah, other than that, let's actually just dive into the monthly highlights for March. Now, this is truly going to be a highlights reel because I just don't have as much to talk about for the month of March. But I guess starting off numbers wise, so in total, we read 5 books. I read 3 out of 6 of my monthly hopefuls. I read 1 book from my winter TBR, which, by the way, was The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. And we had 3 DNFs total. Not so good. And again, one of those was from my winter TBR. As a reminder, I will not be talking about the books that I read or DNF'd from my winter TBR. Actually, in fact, my winter TBR follow-up episode is already up by the time you're listening to this. But if you haven't listened to that yet, you can go to my Buy Me a Coffee page, subscribe, support on there. The link is always in the show notes if you guys want to go there and catch up on bonus content episodes I post there. But anyways, going back to the books I did complete this past month, I guess we did have a fairly good mix in terms of genres, and I did want to highlight that out of the 5 books I completed, we got 2 5-star reads this past month, which I will give myself a pat on the back for that. We got to take all the wins we can get. And actually one of the books that I read was an arc, so that was exciting because, I feel like I've been excited to at least read at least 1 arc a month, which I'm going to be honest, I haven't been getting access to that many arcs, and it's also hard to find time to, I'm going to be honest, guys, to, cold reach out or email publishing companies for, PR packages or physical copies of arcs. Obviously, digital arcs are much easier to get and then try to keep up with and read and finish and review the whole cycle. Anyways, I guess that's a whole other topic. But overall, we had a pretty good month in terms of ratings. I am a little disappointed that I ended up DNFing 3 books because, obviously, again, the ideal was always no DNFs, but I feel like maybe 1 DNF would also be fine. But once I'm getting to 2 or 3, or God forbid if I'm going to get to more than that, that's when I feel like it starts to get to a problem and we got to be a little more selective about the books that we are choosing. But anyways, I will get into some more about each of the DNFs near the end of the episode. And with that, let's just actually dive right into each of my reviews for the books that I read in March. Hey readers, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. And hear me out before you hit skip. I'm so grateful for all my listeners who are with me on this reading journey, and I'd like to ask that if you haven't yet, please leave a rating and review as it helps others find the podcast. Also, please consider supporting the podcast financially as it helps me bring you more exciting content, and you'll get some extras like bonus and subscriber-only episodes, early access to new episodes, and much more. The link to donate will be in the show notes below, or you can go to buymeacoffee.com/fullybookedpod. Thank you so much again for choosing to listen to Fully Booked, and now back to the episode. All right, everyone. So the first book that I read in March was none other than My Friends by Friedrich Bachmann, which I ended up giving 5 stars. So it's safe to say we started off the month of March with a bang, and I certainly didn't expect my first read to be 5 stars. Honestly, I'm still reeling a bit now thinking about how much I ended up loving this book, and even better that I got to read it as an arc. And I will say, I initially wanted to read A Man Called Ova, and sorry, you're probably going to hear me hesitate with that pronunciation every time I say that title, but anyways, yes, I wanted to read that one next after Beartown, because I heard that is one of his top-rated, highly talked about titles. However, I sort of unexpectedly got access to this arc on NetGalley, and I'm trying to actually complete and post reviews for arcs this year before they release to the public, and not just let them sit on my Kindle for eternity. So yes, that is how I ended up reading this one. So far, I like how the premise of each of his books is always something a bit different. There definitely are recurring themes, though I would say, between his books, such as growing up in small towns, toxic masculinity, being a closeted gay, aftermath of sexual assault, abuse, etc. I guess a couple of those can also sort of go under trigger and content warnings for those of you who might be concerned. Anyways, yeah, the storylines themselves are always something different, and in this story, we find ourselves hearing the story of these four teens who grew up together in the same town, with one who ends up becoming this famous artist who later ends up giving his most famous painting to this teenage girl he meets named Louisa, who I would say is our FMC in this story. Although, I will make a note that this story, I feel like I've said story quite a few times here, is told in a kind of non-linear narrative where it constantly goes back and forth between what is happening in the present and one of the friends recounting what happened in the past, which might get annoying for some people because the past accounts tend to go on and kind of ramble, so to speak. TBH, I don't want to go into any more specifics besides that. And unfortunately, I can't share any of the beautiful million highlighted passages that I have since this book isn't out yet. But I will say Friedrich Bachmann really did it again in this one, where I find he's able to fully captivate the sum of some people's very real experiences and how they end up dealing with them, which is in an often heartbreaking way. And I would honestly say he is the master of showing us as the reader how gray the world can be in good and bad ways. Plus, I've yet to read an author so far who is able to capture the pains that men and women go through, and especially people from all different backgrounds and upbringings. I honestly felt for these characters so much, and it's always nice to see the hopeful ending that he gives them all when we finally reach the conclusion, whether it's letting go of guilt, forgiving and making peace with people who have hurt them in the past, or keeping small yet powerful kindness at the center of their lives. Anyways, I could probably go on about this book and Friedrich Bachmann in general now. If you guys can't tell, he will probably be one of my favorite authors of the year. But I just wanted to give a couple more notes that if you're more into books centered on close groups of friends, found family, and also have some interest in art, then you might want to start with this one over Beartown once it's released. Just because Beartown is a lot more centered on hockey within the small town instead. And then the final second note that I'm going to make is that this book does take place in late spring/summer, technically, so it will be the perfect season to pick this book up once it releases in May. Okay, so the second book that I completed in March was The Stand-In by Lily Chu, which I exclusively read on Audible, and I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, and I gave it 1.75 chili peppers because there is a romance plot within this storyline. Going back to the beginning of this book, we basically start out focusing on our FMC Gracie, who is trying to get her mom into this top-notch memory care center and just basically get some better care for her. So I think what I believe ended up happening is she's photographed going like out and about while she's trying to take care of some stuff for her mom and like other things, and then her boss ends up catching her like she's out on work hours and she shouldn't have really been, something like that. And so this whole thing happens and she ends up getting fired, which again is a problem because she's trying to scrounge together money to get her mom into this care center, and now she's unemployed. And then she ends up somehow running into this very famous Chinese actress, Fang Li. They realize upon physically meeting in person, they realize how much they look like each other. So this actress basically asks for help and asks her to impersonate her since they look so mysteriously alike. And of course, she's going to compensate her generously, which is immensely going to help out in Gracie's current situation. And so, that's kind of how the story starts. And I have to say, this is one of those stories that I unfortunately feel like I would have enjoyed a lot if I'd read it when it was first released, which I think was back in might have been in 2021. It's been a couple years. Like, this type of story and the way our female character was presented, I feel like I've kind of read it already a bunch of times now in other, like, similar rom-coms or, like, literary fiction novels. Which is weird because I still appreciated the points that she had to say about mental health, and especially because, like, Gracie struggles a lot with anxiety in this story, and just what she goes through every day, what she is thinking about. I appreciate some of the points she makes, but I don't know. There wasn't anything that was super revelatory to me. Like, I feel like when a character has mental health struggles, there has to be something that really stands out and resonates with me in the storyline, and for me, there was just, nothing really. Like, I still enjoyed it. It's definitely, like, a cute, kind of uplifting rom-com, if that's what you're looking for in a romance. But other than that, I don't have much more to say on this one. The romance also wasn't romancing enough for me, especially, again, in the middle of the book. I did enjoy the relationship, though, between Gracie and her mom and Gracie and Fong Li. But yeah, other than that, I don't know what else I'll have to say. The only other note I have about this book is that, actually, if you can't tell from my spice rating, this book was surprisingly very little spice. Almost no spice, which I didn't know going into it. So that was the one pleasant surprise that I found out about this book. Alright, so the next book that I'm going to talk about in this March reading wrap-up is none other than Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which I ended up giving 4.5 stars. This one really, I feel like, tied up, I don't know, maybe loose ends and some questions that we had as readers from the previous prequel, because some stuff was left a little bit ambiguous by the end of Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And we got answers. And for those of you that don't know still, this prequel basically covers Haymitch's games, and he's Katniss and Peeta's a mentor in their Hunger Games. But this is his games, the one he actually competed and won in. And this one takes place at the second quarter quell, or it's the 50th Hunger Games. And this was the quarter quell where they basically doubled the number of tributes. So instead of 24 people, there were 48 people who competed in this Hunger Games, which I can't imagine having to potentially fight and kill 50 other people. Well, I can't imagine having to kill one person, even, let's just say. But yeah, 50 other people, give or take, is a little crazy. But yeah, this one, I feel like I realized that Suzanne Collins is pretty good at building up the plot line and all the details that are going to be important in, like, the second half or later on in the story. And yeah, she really knows how to work us up as the reader, keep us intrigued. Because yeah, even the parts that, like, take place before the games, like their training and the interviews and all the stuff they go through, I found even those parts interesting to read about. I think this plot also involved a lot of scheming, and let's be honest, the Hunger Games books, obviously the intrigue to us as the reader is, like, the Hunger Games itself in this competition, but I guess the further intrigue for those of us who, you know, really have gotten into this series is what is going on in the background and all the political chaos or lack of it sometimes in this story, and, you know, the whole wanting to overthrow the Capitol again and start another rebellion and war. That's always sort of brewing, especially in these prequel novels. And yeah, we get a bit of that again in this prequel. Yeah, I don't know if I have too much more to say on this one. I feel like I did have a little trouble because I have mentioned to you guys probably a handful of times by now that I am one of those readers that I actually have a bad memory. And despite having reread the whole trilogy only last year, I think I finished Mockingjay in, like, August, if I remember correctly, I don't remember, you know, every single little detail of what happened in those 3 books to be able to relate back to, what was happening in this prequel. So probably if I'd just done a reread, it would have been an even more enjoyable experience. But yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why I didn't rate this book 5 stars, was just because it didn't quite hit as hard for me. I also don't think the characters resonate as deeply with me compared to other people who this is a really highly beloved series. I know I saw a lot of the girls in my book club gave this book a 5 stars, and yeah, unfortunately for me, it just didn't quite hit that 5-star mark. And also because, if you guys know, I'm pretty picky with my 5 stars. I really reserve that for at least what I consider like very top tier books. And I don't know, writing style and tone and stuff is a big factor for me if you haven't noticed. And yeah, this one, just the writing, it did feel a little bit YA still, which makes sense because they are supposed to be kids in this book still. And I think Haymitch is 16 in this book. But yeah, it just felt a little bit YA at times and lacked certain nuance and depth that, you know, some of my other 5-star reads, you know, really got into in terms of emotional depth of the characters and stuff like that. So yeah, that's why it just missed the mark for me, I should say. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else I was going to say about this book. But yeah, like I said, highly recommended that actually either right before or right after you, I guess, reread, or if you haven't read this series still yet, then read the Hunger Games original trilogy, also read the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. But otherwise, yes, you are really going to enjoy this second Hunger Games prequel book. All right, we're going to take a very different, very cute turn with this next book that I read, and we're going to talk about The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams, which I ended up rating 3.75 stars, and I gave 1.5 and chili peppers. If you don't know, this is one of her closed-door adult romances, and it's actually kind of funny because I think this is the first book of hers that I ever put on my TBR, and it's been sitting there for a while. For some reason, I just happened to pick up the When in Rome series first, I guess on a whim, and I kept going with that. But we're finally getting back around to some of her earlier titles, and hopefully I'll continue, I guess, this interconnected standalone series, because there are 2 books in this cheat sheet world so far, and maybe there's more to come. I don't know. Excuse me. But anyways, this one, I have to say, was pretty cute. I think what I liked a lot about this one was that it was a true, very pure friends to lovers. Because you guys know, I've read a bunch of childhood friends to lovers over the past couple years, and I love that trope. But yeah, we hardly ever get friends to lovers where maybe they knew each other for a while, but they've only ever been friends. And that's what this book was, which was very cute, very interesting. And if you guys don't know about this one, we are basically centered on our 2 MCs, Nathan and Bree, who are a football player, an NFL player to be specific, and a ballerina dancer, and she owns a dance studio, and they've known each other for years. They've known each other since high school, but they've both secretly been in love with the other, and they haven't said a word to each other and have just kept on being friends. But then they're basically forced into this fake dating PR relationship when a viral video of Brie gets out to the whole world, and then they have to appear that they're dating, and then that kind of starts off, I guess, I guess the reason for them to, well, really start falling for each other, but to also finally admit their feelings for the other. I have to say, this was definitely one of those books where there was a lack of conflict. There wasn't a huge 3rd-act breakup. Like, you know, not like a bunch of back and forth miscommunication, whole thing. It was honestly just super sweet. Our characters were honestly very authentic and honest. I think as individuals, but also with each other. And they really helped each other go through some different traumas and healing for some of the story. But yeah, honestly, mostly very cute romance. The only thing I will say is that I have to say that Sarah Adams' writing has gotten better with each book that she's written, because this one, there was definitely some cringe going on with some of the writing, and my biggest issue, I guess, so to speak, was that this is not going to be a spoiler, by the way. It literally is stated in the first chapter, but throughout this story, Nathan has a nickname for Brie, and guys, he calls her Brie Cheese.
Nope.
And yeah, this goes on throughout the whole story, and I kind of couldn't, like, I know maybe it's supposed to be cute and funny. It kind of is, but I don't know. There's this border of cheesy and cringy, and we're crossing it with this one. So I don't know, but I guess other than that, that's my really only complaint with this book. The ending was a little bit unrealistic in my opinion, but honestly, super cute. HEA, obviously. And I have to say, this one is the most closed door that I've read out of all her books so far. Like most of her other books besides her latest release have been closed door. But this one was, yeah, like the least amount of spice. And there's only like one or two scenes that come at the end. And it's like as fade to black as you can get. So yeah, if you're looking for a very closed door, very cutesy friends to lovers romance, then I highly recommend this one. And we're back. So JK, in a crazy turn of events, I ended up finishing 2 more books literally right before the month ends. And I mean literally because today, as I'm recording right now, is now Monday, March 31st. So yeah, we really slid those 2 in, and we're going to try and slide 2 more reviews quickly into today's wrap-up. Starting with Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton, which I ended up rating a solid 4 stars. Now, Tom Felton obviously is otherwise known to the world as Draco Malfoy from the Harry Potter series, and this is a memoir that he wrote, I believe back in 2022 is when it was originally published, and I had the pleasure of listening to this one all on audio thanks to Spotify Premium. Yeah, I have to say this one was a pleasant surprise read, specifically in terms of memoir. Some memoirs are kind of hit and miss in terms of like, I don't know, the writing style, and I feel like the narration and order of events, which this one did suffer a little bit from that problem. I think there were a couple times where he kind of went chronologically out of order. Like, I guess chronological in terms of literally his life story, which kind of threw me off at times, especially because I was only listening on audio. But at the same time, I thought this was, I don't know, surprisingly well written. Of course, seeing as he's an actor, maybe not as much of a writer, it was kind of more casual, more conversational, and like directly speaking to the reader. But again, because I was listening on audio, this actually worked pretty well. And surprisingly, Tom Felton was really funny in this memoir. He had so many interesting stories to tell. Obviously, especially if you're a huge Potterhead like I am, you'll love all the different anecdotes of hearing about life on set, what it was like growing up as a star in the Harry Potter series. And there's especially one anecdote about his grandfather's cameo in Philosopher's Stone that I found especially funny and intriguing. I think at times I did want to hear a little bit more about Tom Felton as an individual versus Tom and like the conflicting dual identity he had with Draco Malfoy, or even lack of identity at times, I should say, as apparently he didn't get as much recognition as I would have thought he would have, compared to the big 3 actors from the Harry Potter series. But yeah, it was interesting to hear about, again, life on set, influence that a lot of the other older actors had on his life, and especially on his acting career, and also life after Harry Potter, what ended up happening. Actually, there were lots of funny anecdotes as well on being, I guess, misrecognized, especially, I guess, once he lived in LA and going out and about, which I found cool. But yeah, just overall, this was a pretty surprisingly good memoir. So yeah, again, if you are a big fan of the Harry Potter series and want to know more about what life would have been like as a star in this series, and especially maybe if you're a fellow Slytherin, unfortunately, I am a Hufflepuff, but despite that, I still was able to enjoy this memoir, and you might as well. Okay, and for the actual final book that I was able to read in March, we have Divergent by Veronica Roth, which is a reread. I did read this series originally when I was a teen, when it first came out, and I ended up rating this one 4.25 stars, my second read around. And also, just a note that this one is basically no spice, as it is a YA dystopian, so I only gave it 1 chili pepper, which was nice to read, as usual. Now, I have to say, I forgot how much this one just dives right into the world as soon as the book starts. It's definitely one that there's not, I don't know, as much slow like world building and setup. We literally just get right into the thick of really the plot that centers around our FMC. And I know a lot of the series that I talk about on my podcast are probably ones that people have already read ages ago, or maybe you at least watched the movies, but I feel like I always just give a little summary because let's be honest, there is always some group of people out there who honestly live under a rock, and there's a chance that you've not heard this. So I will do my best to give a quick summary and explanation of, I guess, what is going on in this series. So, in this first book, we are centering on our FMC Beatrice, otherwise known as Triss, and she's just turned 16 and is about to go through the process of, I guess, choosing and being sorted into a faction for life. And we start off on her test day, which this test is basically supposed to tell you what faction you should choose, but her test results end up being inconclusive, and she is known as what they would call in this world Divergent, which is something that's very dangerous, seeing as you're supposed to be in one faction for life and kind of conform to that certain faction's standards and one way of living, so to speak. So basically, yeah, she is something that is dangerous and no one can know what she truly is. And so, yeah, she's kind of just trying to hide who she truly is, I guess, in the plot of this book, at least from most people. And also just going through the initiation of, being in a new faction, learning how to fight and take risks and to kind of stand up for herself, I guess, for the first time, as her new faction is very different from the old one that she's in. So one thing I do want to say is that compared to, I guess, some dystopian books I've been recently rereading or reading for the first time, like this year, I liked our FMC and MMC a lot better compared to those other series that I was reading. I just think, I guess, Triss and Four as individuals were very refreshing to read about, but also the way they were able to act and care for each other, even when they couldn't like visibly or directly show each other like kindness, because of the dangers and threats that were posed to them. As the story went on, I just found really nice. But yeah, needless to say, this is a series that I'm definitely excited to continue and hopefully finish rereading within this year, as I definitely don't remember as much of the plot in the second book, and honestly, I can like barely remember the third book and how everything resolves. So can't wait to continue. Also, I'm excited to rewatch all the movies, which thankfully right now they're all on Netflix, and get to see the on-screen chemistry between Shailene and Theo. But man, they really did a number with the casting with these movies, because if you guys don't know, Shailene Woodley and Ansel Elgort were in The Fault in Our Stars and Divergent, and both those movies released in the same year. And in Fault in Our Stars, they're lovers, but in Divergent, they're brother and sister. So talk about some, alternate universe incest going on. But anyways, we'll just try our best to remember that these indeed are completely separate universes. Alright, so now that we've gone through all the books that I completed in March, let's go through some of the books I DNF'd in the month of March. With that, let's start off talking about Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, which I ended up DNFing at 46%. I'm going to be honest, this book, as I wrote in my review, had a strong start. For some reason, I just got bored around, again, the halfway mark in this book. The world setup also wasn't that great in this book. I felt like there was a lot of details that I was seeking that weren't being given to us. But there were a lot of things that were just very mid and kind of weak about this book compared to others. So I personally would not, at the least, I would not recommend this book if you are an adult, and this is definitely one that you can skip. And the next book that I DNF'd in March, everyone is going to be very disappointed when I say this, but it was none other than Deep End by Ali Hazelwood, which I DNF'd at 56% of the way through, and I ended up rating it 3.25 stars, and I gave it 3.25 to 3.5 chili peppers. Again, because this one's been talked about a lot already online. I'm not going to go into the particulars of like the premise or the setup. I wasn't as invested as I could be in the characters and the storyline. Actually, I had a little bit of a problem with like the initial setup, like how the two MCs meet and kind of get connected too, which I guess I won't say because I don't know, it's going to start to spoil the story for those of you who haven't picked this up yet. But yeah, and I'm also not going to go into the particulars of the graphic explicit content in this book. Besides that, it involves kinks. And yeah, just reading the scenes for me were, I don't know, how do I put it? Kind of awkward and just overall unenjoyable, because this is what happens again when you give someone who doesn't like spice this kind of book. Like, it's not going to be for me. So, yeah, I think for me, I gotta know what I can stick with sometimes. Obviously, if this is something you're interested in, then you'll probably enjoy this book quite a lot. I do know people who personally read it who really enjoyed this book, and it's probably one of their top favorites, book of Ali Hazelwood's. So, yes, there definitely is a contingent of people who are going to enjoy this, but I was not one of them. So before we close out this month's wrap up, let's do the best versus worst pick of the month. And I'm going to be honest, I could not pick between the two 5-star reads that I had. And so that is why I am going to hand it to My Friends by Frederick Bachman and The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna for this month's best pick. Honestly, both of these books had so many well done, similar elements, but especially in terms of the writing style, the character development, and actually the gift that Frederick Bachman and Kristen Hanna both have to be able to bring these characters to life and especially make their emotions just jump out of the page at you, and you're able to feel and resonate so deeply with these characters. I have so many good things to say about both of these books. One note that I want to make, which I forgot if I mentioned it earlier when I was talking about My Friends, but both of these authors are able to really use metaphor and imagery to convey and better describe universal human emotions. So emotions that we all feel, but also still make it feel like personal and compelling to you, or at least that's how I felt when I was reading each of these stories. I really just enjoyed so many elements of this story, both stories, and I can see how anybody could enjoy either of these stories, and I think it would honestly come down to like your personal preference and experiences as to like which of these books that you would enjoy better, because again, there were so many elements that were well done in each of these. These are both definitely writers that I will be continuing to reading through all of their backlist titles. So I really couldn't pick one best pick for the month of March. And for the worst pick of this month, I'm going to say The Stand-In by Lily Chu, which is honestly just unfortunate because this book was not really that bad. At least for me, if I rate a book at least 3 stars, maybe 3.5 stars like I did with this one, it's likely that I still quite enjoyed a good amount of the plot, the characters and their personality, the writing style even, etc. But honestly, this book just happened to fall within a month that had some better, higher rated books compared to my other months of reading so far. And that's really the only reason that this one stands in for this month's worst pick. And that concludes my March reading wrap up. I have to say, it was a pretty busy month overall and in terms of my reading. And I have to admit that I feel like I've been a little disappointed because January was such a big reading month in terms of number, and February and March have subsequently been a little bit disappointing since the start of the year. But I have to say, overall, there were some higher quality books read in the month of March. So honestly, I will take that at least as a win. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about all the books that I read this past month. Let me know if any of you also read any of these books or what books you did read in the month of March. And I guess the last thing I want to say before we go is that I'm hoping to get a lot more video episodes out over the next couple of weeks. So if you're not yet already, you should definitely go and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can stay notified of all of my uploads. I always have the YouTube channel linked in the show notes. And if you're somehow listening from YouTube right now, because FYI, I do also post all my audio episodes to YouTube, then please go and subscribe. And yeah, just get excited for all the content that is to come your way over the next couple weeks. As always, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you back here for episode 32. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you were able to take away something, and be sure to follow the podcast for more bookish content. Until next time, stay fully booked, and I'll talk to you soon.